It was a chilly, rainy morning in Southern California when Sarah found herself caught between the pursuit of her dreams and the harsh reality of the elements. The rain had started to pour down in torrents, but she couldn't afford to wait for the storm to pass. Today was too important. The meeting she had at the bank could change everything. It could be the chance she had been working toward for so long. Sarah's day began just like any other. The clock struck 6 a.m., and as the world around her was still quiet, she moved around her small apartment with practiced ease. She quickly prepared breakfast for her young son, Liam, who was still sleeping soundly in his room. Sarah had always been determined to build a better life for her son. But this morning, there was something extra in her steps. Today wasn't just another day. It was the day that could make her dream of owning her own business a reality. The idea of creating an organic pet food brand had started with her late partner. Together, they had crafted organic meals for their pets, ensuring their health and happiness. After his tragic passing, Sarah had carried on making the pet food, calling it Liam's Organic Pet Delights, in honor of their son. The product was a hit with friends and family, and the small business had slowly grown. But there was a catch. Sarah needed a loan to take it to the next level. That was why today was so important. She had the paperwork, the vision, and the passion, but she needed the bank to believe in her. By 6:40 a.m., Sarah was ready. She kissed Liam on the forehead, careful not to wake him, and grabbed her bag. Today was the day she had been waiting for. As she stepped outside, she saw her cousin, Katie, pulling up to watch Liam for the day. After exchanging a quick hug, Sarah rushed off, hoping she could get to the bank on time. She took the same familiar route to the bank, walking briskly through the empty streets. Most people were still at home, taking their time waking up, but Sarah knew she couldn't waste a minute. She would have taken the bus, but her funds were low and walking was her only option. Besides, there was still plenty of time to get there by 8 a.m. or so, she thought. As Sarah walked, she noticed the clouds beginning to darken. The weather, which had started out clear, was rapidly changing. She glanced at the sky and realized that rain was imminent. She had no umbrella and no coat. She had hoped the day would stay dry, but it looked like she was about to get soaked. What should she do? Go back home and delay the meeting? Or should she press on, determined to face the storm, both literal and metaphorical? Sarah tightened her grip on her bag and decided to keep moving. Maybe the rain would hold off. But as she walked, the clouds began to release their fury. The first droplets hit her, and soon the rain was coming down in sheets. Sarah looked around for shelter, but there was nothing in sight. She had about 20 minutes left to get to the bank, and she knew she couldn't waste any more time. She pulled her bag under her jacket, trying to keep her important documents dry, but it was no use. The rain soaked through her clothes, but she didn't care. She was so close. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Sarah spotted a large tree with thick leaves, offering some protection from the downpour. She hurried over, the rain drenching her, but at least her paperwork remained dry. But the rain wasn't letting up, and it was already 8 a.m. She couldn't stay here forever, waiting for the storm to pass. Without hesitation, Sarah gathered her courage and ran toward the bank, her clothes quickly becoming soaked through. As she ran, she passed by a figure jogging through the rain, seemingly unfazed by the storm. It wasn't until she was nearly past him that she realized who it was. Shaquille O'Neal, the legendary basketball player, was jogging through the streets, dressed in a hoodie and joggers. He noticed her as she rushed by, clearly drenched, and sped up to catch up with her. "Are you out for a jog?" Shaq asked with a kind smile, glancing at her through the rain. Without slowing down, Sarah muttered, "No, just trying to make it to the bank." Shaq raised an eyebrow. "It must be pretty important." Sarah nodded, not slowing her pace. She wasn't about to waste any more time talking. "Yes, very important." He offered her a ride in his SUV, which was parked just up the road, but Sarah declined. She was so close to the bank now, just a few blocks away. With a brief thank you, she turned the corner toward the bank, unaware that her life was about to change. When Sarah entered the bank, the cold air hit her like a wall, and a trail of water followed her as she walked. She felt the chill seep through her clothes, but her mind was focused. She had come this far. She would not let something as trivial as rain stop her from securing her future. As she approached the loan officer's office, she saw a name tag that read, Henry. She greeted him politely, but he didn't respond. Instead, he continued typing on his laptop, ignoring her. "Good morning," Sarah said again, this time louder. Henry briefly glanced up, but his eyes quickly returned to his screen. He gave no further acknowledgement. Sarah tried to remain calm, but it was hard. First, the rain, and now this rude behavior. She couldn't help but wonder if this was a sign that things weren't going to work out. "Can I sit down?" she asked, hoping for some form of courtesy. Henry simply shook his head, pointing at the chair without saying a word. "Is something wrong?" she asked, but he didn't answer, just continued typing as though she wasn't there. Finally, Henry picked up a file, left the office for a few minutes, and returned without a word. Sarah, frustrated but determined, opened her bag and laid out the carefully organized documents she had brought with her. She had made sure everything was in order. She wasn't going to let anything stand in her way today. But then something unexpected happened. Henry barely glanced at the file before setting it aside. Sarah stood frozen, confused. Henry answered a call, laughing with someone on the other end. After hanging up, he looked at her coldly. "You'll have to wait," he said, barely meeting her gaze. "I'll call you when I'm ready." With that, he motioned for her to leave his office and wait in the lobby. Sarah could hardly believe what was happening. She had done everything right, arrived on time, brought all the necessary paperwork, but now she was being treated like an afterthought. As she sat in the waiting area, Sarah noticed that she was the only person left. The others had come and gone, and each time, they left with a smile. She glanced around, trying to stay optimistic, but it was hard. The minutes stretched into hours. It was nearing 10 a.m., and Sarah had not yet been called in. She saw Henry approve the loan for the last customer, a woman who had come in after her. She was laughing as she left the office with a form, while Sarah sat, staring at the floor, defeated. Finally, Sarah couldn't take it anymore. She walked up to Henry's office and knocked. "Mr. Henry," she said, her voice trembling with frustration. "I've been waiting for hours." Henry barely looked up. "Wait your turn," he said with a dismissive tone. But Sarah was done waiting. She walked into the office and demanded answers. "I've been sitting here all morning while you help everyone else. Why am I being treated this way?" Henry didn't even bother to look at her. He simply pointed at the door, indicating that she should leave. But Sarah wasn't going to back down. "I've waited long enough," she said. "I deserve to know why I'm being treated like this." Finally, Henry looked at her with disdain. "You're not eligible for the loan," he said coldly. "Why?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. Henry barely acknowledged her. "You're black," he said matter-of-factly. "Our bank doesn't give loans to black people." Sarah's heart sank. She had been prepared for many challenges, but this was beyond anything she could have imagined. She stared at Henry in disbelief, trying to make sense of his words. "This is the 21st century," Sarah said, trying to contain her anger. "You're telling me that I can't get a loan because of my skin color?" Henry shrugged, uninterested in her shock or outrage. "It's the bank's policy," he said, turning back to his laptop. But Sarah couldn't just walk away. She couldn't let this stand. "This is racism," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "You're discriminating against me simply because of the color of my skin." Before she could say anything more, Henry pressed a button on his desk, and security was at the door. 2 guards entered and roughly escorted Sarah out of the office. She tried to stand her ground, but they were too strong. She was forced out of the building, still in shock at what had just happened. Outside, the rain continued to fall, soaking her to the bone. As she sat on the steps of the bank, Sarah couldn't hold back the tears anymore. She had worked so hard, sacrificed so much, only to be turned away because of her race. It felt like the world was against her. But little did she know, her life was about to change. Shaquille O'Neal, the man she had passed earlier that morning, was on his way up the stairs of the bank when he saw Sarah crying on the steps. Without a second thought, he approached her, holding an umbrella over her. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. Sarah looked up, surprised to see him. She couldn't speak at first. She was overcome with emotion. But when she finally managed to tell him what had happened, Shaq's expression turned serious. "You mean they denied you the loan because you're black?" Shaq asked, incredulous. "That's unbelievable." Shaq was appalled by what Sarah had been through. Without hesitation, he walked her back into the bank, determined to get answers. Inside, he confronted Henry and demanded to know how such blatant racism could be happening in 2024. The situation escalated quickly, and in a moment of frustration, Shaq announced that he was withdrawing all of his money from the bank. "I can't support a bank that treats people like this," Shaq declared. "If you can't treat Sarah with respect, then I won't keep my money here." The bank manager soon got involved, but nothing could stop Shaq's resolve. He pulled out his phone and went live, broadcasting what was happening to thousands of viewers. The video quickly went viral. People around the world were outraged by the blatant discrimination, and many started pulling their funds from the bank. The backlash was swift and fierce. But that wasn't all Shaq did. After dropping Sarah off at her apartment, he handed her a check for $1 million, more than enough to start her business and take care of her son. Sarah couldn't believe her eyes. She was overwhelmed with gratitude, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know what to say," Sarah whispered, unable to comprehend the magnitude of his gesture. Shaq smiled, his voice warm. "You don't need to say anything. Just promise me you'll use this to chase your dreams." In the days that followed, Shaq's video sparked a nationwide conversation about racism, and the bank's reputation took a massive hit. As for Sarah, her life took a dramatic turn. She used the money from Shaq to start her business, and within a few months, Liam's Organic Pet Delights became a success. Not only that, but Sarah's story reached the public's heart. A GoFundMe campaign was launched for her, raising over $2 million in donations. People from all walks of life came together to support her, inspired by her resilience and Shaq's extraordinary act of kindness. Within a year, Sarah's pet food line was sold globally, and she became one of the leading entrepreneurs in the industry. What had started as a rainy, heartbreaking day had turned into the beginning of a whole new chapter for Sarah. And as she looked at the sky, now clear and bright, she realized that sometimes a single moment can change everything.